Hi, I'm Tara from Wild Bird Farm. I garden here in central Iowa in Zone 5. Today we're going to talk all about annual plants you can start from seed so you have greenery for your bouquets all season. First up on our list is cress. Now in the picture here this is Persian crest, but I've also grown penny cress and wrinkled cress. Some people would consider this a weed. I think it's a beautiful addition to our bouquets. These are open pollinated, so you can save your own seeds. They have a quick days to maturity at about 65 to 75 days. And the best part is that you can direct sow. So as soon as your soil can be worked in the spring, you plant these little seeds and they will produce very quickly for you to use in your early season bouquets. Next up is Bulbophyllum, and I couldn't find many pictures that I had taken of this, but I used it all the time in the earlier spring bouquets. Again, these are open pollinated, so you can save your own seeds year over year. They take a little bit longer, about 90 days to maturity. They're extremely cold hardy. I start them indoors. They like a cold, dark start, so I actually set my growing cells out in my garage on the floor where it's very cold for a couple weeks, and then I bring them in under lights and they sprout pretty well that way for me. I plant these out quite early before my last frost, so I have them again for the earlier bouquets. Next up are some of what I think is the most gorgeous filler, and that is honeywort or cerinthe. These plants aren't always super tall, but what they lack, for me in height anyway, they make up for in color. They have a beautiful draping habit. You'll want to harvest these when the bracts darken to blue and they have purple flowers showing. I'm planting some of these today to put out early in my unheated hoop house. They have large seeds and I'm just pushing them down about 1/2 inch into the soil into the larger size cell packs. I'll moisten the soil a bit more and then add a dome to keep the humidity in while these germinate. They usually take maybe just 5, 6, 7 days for me, and lots of times you'll get 2 shoots coming out of one seed, so don't be surprised if you see that. I've talked about the varieties of Sweet William before, and we actually started some seeds together earlier. I love to use this before the flowers bloom as greenery. It has long, strong, tall stems, and they just have a really interesting foliage that looks great in early season bouquets. For some of us, Sweet William is a perennial, and that's an added bonus. Bell's Violet is next on our list. I love this bright green, interesting texture in bouquets, but sometimes it's a little bit tricky to start from seed. Here's my trick. First of all, I chill the seeds in my refrigerator for a couple of weeks. You can do this in the seed packages, or you can jump to this step and put it in the fridge then. You get a paper towel wet and you pour those seeds onto your damp paper towel. I fold that damp paper towel up and put it in a baggie. Make sure you label it, because if you're like me, you might forget what you have in your fridge. I then put that baggie back in my fridge for at least 2 weeks. It doesn't hurt if it's a little bit longer than that. After those weeks are up, I pull the baggie out and I put it in a bright, warm location. Within 5 to 7 days, you open up the baggie and you will see little roots shooting out of those hard-coated seeds. See the little white on these seeds here? That's the roots starting. At this point, I plant those directly, very carefully in soil. You don't want to disturb that root at all. Throughout the next couple weeks, your seeds will continue to break through that seed coat. I check mine every 2 or 3 days and just have my cell tray ready to add more. You push them down maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch in the soil, or you can just cover them up carefully. I mist them well to make sure that potting soil is very well moistened. And then I put the seeds that haven't germinated yet back in that warm, bright location and just keep checking them. Just make sure your paper towel stays damp. Mine surprised me with their germination, and I didn't have quite enough potting soil to fill up this cell tray, so I was kind of making do with the first half here. But I've since then gotten more soil, and I just keep filling up this cell tray as those little seeds push their root out. Last season was my first year trying Sweet Annie, and boy am I hooked. I love the smell, and it is great to use both fresh and dried. Again, this is an open pollinated annual, so you can collect your seeds for future years. I found that sowing 5 to 6 weeks before I needed to plant out after my last frost worked well for me. I barely covered the seed, and I was careful to bottom water so I didn't displace those seeds. They are very tiny. I have heard that this self-sows readily, so keep that in mind if you aren't wanting seeds all over the place. Next up is basil, and if you've been growing cut flowers, you probably know about using Mrs. Burns lemon basil or cinnamon basil in your bouquets. Some people don't care for it, but I really enjoy the smell. As long as I can get those stems long enough, I'm using it in my bouquets. They are a warm season annual, so you won't want to start these too early, and I usually start using them about the July time frame. Next up is frosted explosion grass. What a unique, airy filler, and pretty easy to grow, I've found. This is another open pollinated variety, and I've found that it matures in about 85 to 90 days. You'll want to keep this one harvested so you see future flushes from the same plants. The next one might be considered a cheater for greenery, but I love using Cosmo foliage for greenery. Cosmos only last 3 or 4 days in the vase for me, but I love using their foliage as green accents in my bouquets. Here is an extra tip. See this one here where the foliage looks a little bit different than the original? This is the Bright Lights Cosmos. I found them at Baker's Creek, and they have just a foliage that I think looks great, almost fern-like, in my bouquets. Next is Mahogany Splendorhabiscus. While this isn't a green foliage, it's a great burgundy one. It is grown mostly for the foliage. Very rarely do I see the flowers here in our shorter growing season. Started from seed, these are very easy to grow, and they grow into quite large bushes for an annual plant. Very easy to add some pops of burgundy in your later season bouquets. You'll want to make sure this one gets full sun if you want the deep burgundy color. You can see here this one shows a little bit more green as it wasn't in full sun. A super great one to grow that I highly recommend. I've gotten my seeds from Johnny's Seeds for this one. Last but not least is Eucalyptus, and of course this could be a perennial depending on your zone, but here in Zone 5 this is generally grown as an annual. There are lots of varieties that have that patented eucalyptus smell. I have grown blue bouquet or baby blue before, as well as silver drop. This year I'll be growing silver drop again, as well as silver dollar. While I've found the seeds relatively easy to germinate, the trick is when you're growing them on. They need quite a while, usually 3 to 4 months before you plant them out. I've found that they like their soil on the drier side, and I'm always potting up. I don't want to see roots coming out of the bottom for these, as they don't really like root disturbance. So give them plenty of room in their pots. Here in Zone 5, I'm generally able to start harvesting in August with one big main harvest in September. And of course, eucalyptus is great to dry, so you can have some fun playing around with that as the weather cools. that wraps up my list today. While there are others out there, these are some of my favorites. Please like and subscribe and hit that bell button to be notified when I drop more content. Until next time, see ya!